It's Simon van Gent on Assembly Radio with Be My Echo, a song off his new record, Suffer Well. And Simon van Gent is a songwriter from Cape Town, South Africa. And between February 2014 and February 2015, he challenged himself to write a song every week for a year. Each week he posted a brand new song to his blog until all 52 were released into the World Wide Web. On completion of this mammoth task, he connected with Johannesburg-based artist Sanette Stegman, who took on her own challenge to make an ink drawing for each of these songs. Each illustration is inspired by the stories and the mood they invoke and include a line of the lyrics. At the same time, Simon and his introspective indie folk rock band, called Simon and the Band Apart, has teamed up with producer Chris Tuck to record the best of the blog songs for a new album. And this will all come together at a joint exhibition opening and album launch on the 3rd of September at the Young Blood Gallery in Bree Street, Cape Town, as part of the First Thursday initiative. Each illustration will be box framed with the CD of that song, and the event will feature a live performance by the band of the songs on the new album. And we are very privileged today to have Simon live in the studio. How are you doing today, Simon?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
All right, well, let's talk about this new album. Obviously, it's been a long time coming. You've been working really hard at it. Let's go back to the beginning, the genesis of the project, and talk about how you came up with the idea.
Okay. Well, I actually gave a talk on this the other day. I don't know if you know these Pecha Kucha talks. In fact, they have them here at the Assembly usually, but this one was in the City Hall. And so if I end up sounding like I'm giving a Pecha Kucha talk, it's because I memorized this stuff.
That's awesome.
Last week. So it started with something that, I don't know if you know the podcast This American Life. Well, it's a radio show in the States. And Ira Glass is the guy who presents it. And I heard an interview with him, and he was talking about becoming a writer and what makes people become writers and what they go through. And basically, he talks about this thing he calls the gap. And he says that when people set out to become artists, the thing that inspires them is that they have good taste. So they know what great art is, and they love it, and they want to be able to do it. They want to be able to emulate that great art. And so they set out on their journey and start creating. And the first thing they realize, because they know what great art is and they can tell the difference between good art and bad art, it immediately becomes apparent to them that there's this huge gap between the art that they're creating and the art they're aspiring to create. And basically they realize that they suck. And because that's such an unpleasant feeling, what happens to a lot of people is they give up right at the beginning of their journey, thinking that the ability to make that great art is some God-given talent that they just don't have. But what Ira Glass explains in this interview is that the only way you can close that gap is by putting in the hours and doing the work. So I basically wanted to put that to the test and see what would happen if I found a way to make myself work really hard at my songwriting. But I knew that it was going to be hard to discipline myself, and I needed some clever trick to force myself to work hard. And that's where I came up with this concept of a song a week. And the trick is to go public. The minute you tell everybody you're going to do something and go onto Facebook and tell all your friends, then if you don't follow through with it, you're going to end up looking really bad. And that was the whole idea of setting up the blog, announcing it on Facebook, and then I basically couldn't back out of it. And it forced me to carry through with the process, even though it was incredibly stressful. And when I was in the middle of it, I wished I hadn't done it. There was no way I could not do it because I would have looked stupid. So that was what got me into it and how I managed to do it.
So you had to get a pro SoundCloud account to enable you to upload all those hours of audio.
That's what I realized about halfway through when I started running out of space.
All right, so you essentially wrote a song a week and uploaded it onto SoundCloud for an entire year.
Yeah.
So what was it like in the first month or so? Did it flow quite easily? When did it start to get difficult for you?
No, it was difficult from the beginning. It never got harder or more difficult in a general way. There were weeks where it was harder, and there were some weeks where I would just write the song without even really trying. It's like that, sometimes you'll really have to work hard for that song, and it won't end up being such a great song even. And sometimes it'll just happen. It'll kind of fall out of you, and you'll think, oh, that must be a rubbish song because it was much too easy to write. And then you play it to people and you realize, actually, no, that was a good one. So one of the great things about the whole process was that you end up with a lot of songs. So, you can't really control when a song is going to be a good song. All you can do is write the song and find out later if if it was a good one or not. And writing a lot of songs means there's more likely to be good ones. So, for example, I heard this interview once with Beck on another podcast I love to listen to called All Songs Considered. I don't know if you guys know that podcast. It's an NPR show. And Bob Boylan, who's the host, said to Beck, I don't believe you've ever written a bad song. And Beck said, no, I've written plenty of bad songs. It's just no one ever hears them. But that to write the good ones, you've got to write the bad ones. And that's really what I discovered, You mass produce in this way, you're going to end up with lots of good ones. And also, if you go into a studio to record an album, say you've got 15 to 20 songs, which is kind of what I would have done in the past, it means you're going to end up putting songs on the album that maybe you're not entirely sure should go on. But in this case, because I had 52 to choose from, it meant I didn't have to compromise at all on the quality of which songs ended up on the album. I really feel like every single song is like a strong song, And basically I've got to do this for every album that I ever make from now on, because there's no going back. I've seen how well this works. Yeah.
And so essentially you are living proof of that concept that creating a body of work really does pay off, in the sense of being a creative and trying to get that good quality songs out there. You have to keep producing a whole massive body of work. That's the only way that you get to the end goal.
I guess, yeah. And also, writing a lot of songs gives you leeway to mess around with crazy ideas, because if one idea doesn't work, it doesn't matter, because there are going to be so many other songs to choose from in the end. So I started just taking a chance and writing songs about things I've never written about. I wrote songs about climate change, and I've got a song there called Suffer Well, which became the title track, which when I wrote, I thought, this is a hell of a heavy thing to write a song about. Should I really be going so deep into this thing?
Yeah.
But I thought, no, what the hell? There's so many songs that I've got to play with. I can just write the thing and take a chance on it, And very often the ones I did take a chance on ended up being the better ones, which was quite interesting.
It must have been a very interesting experience, though, looking at 52 songs that you've written and then deciding which are the ones that you want to choose for the album. Because with so many songs, and an album normally being, 10 to 15 songs, that's a massive reduction of the songs. So let's talk about that process of actually choosing the ones that appear on the album.
That's very easy to answer. All we did was we got all our friends and
you put them all in a hat.
Yeah, no. we got all, there's a bunch of people we know that love the music, that we could trust with their opinions, some fans, some friends. And there was probably, about 10 or so people that we got to make lists of which songs they'd like to hear on an album. And all I did was I got them to make A lists and B lists. And then anything that was on an A list got 2 points, anything that was on a B list got 1 point. And then I just added up the points and made a new list based on those lists. And that's how we worked out which were going to be on the album. But there was still a little bit of leeway. There was one song which didn't make that list, which my drummer Ross insisted be on because it's his favorite,
Sure.
Things like that. So
you actually relied essentially on your friends or your fans, if you will.
Well, I generally do. It's I've got such a hectic internal critic that it's very hard for me to actually appreciate my own music until someone else tells me, okay, that's a good song, because that critic in me has destroyed that song for me in that way. It's hard to explain. I kind of tend to run my own work down so hard. And it's really something I need to do something about, because it's a big obstacle to the creative process. But in fact, that's really why it was necessary for me to do something like a song a week, because it forced me to finish the songs despite what that the thing Ira Glass said, that feeling of I suck. Well, that's essentially what writer's block is, I think. In my case, at any rate, it's like you start writing a song and then there's this voice in your head saying, this song sucks. You suck. You're an imposter. You're not a real artist. Who are you kidding? And that voice, for whatever reason, I don't know where it comes from, probably some rubbish from my past, But having a weekly deadline meant I couldn't let that voice stop me, because
Didn't have a choice.
I didn't have a choice, yeah. So I had to, and so it became very clear to me that writer's block is really just the fear of making bad art, so you just carry on writing no matter what. And that's the trick for me, is to just keep doing the job. It's like, I know how to do it. I can do it. And it doesn't require that I be feeling fantastic about the song, although that helps. And that's definitely a fuel that keeps you going. But you can also keep going just by keeping going.
Mm.
And that really worked,
And did you find that as you did keep going, that voice got softer over time, that critical voice, or did you find it was always kind of there?
No, it was always there. I mean, that voice is to do with unconscious stuff that's not going to change just because you keep beating it. If you're going to fix that, you need to go to therapy or something. It's like, that's what I think.
Very familiar with that voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think songwriters or artists are familiar with that voice. I mean, I know from my own perspective, when I've tried to write songs, I always feel, this is not a great song. This is
this really what I could be,
There's so many different things you can think, this sounds like something else. These lyrics are weak, the melody is average.
Yeah, but you're learning something, no matter how good the song ends up being, by sitting there and plowing through the process of finishing the song, trying your best every time, you're learning something. So even it might be a song that's not so good, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're on that journey up the mountain to where the great songs are.
Exactly. I mean, that was the whole idea behind the body of work, is that you're only going to write your best songs if you produce a big body of work, because how else are you going to know, how are you going to be able to differentiate
and also you learning new things along the way. Every song I wrote, I learned something. I learned a new turn of phrase, or I learned a new way to sing over that chord progression, or a new way to find an idea. I mean, I discovered a great trick for finding song ideas when I really had no ideas. In fact, the songs Suffer Well, I almost think I shouldn't say this because it's supposed to be some mystical thing where you find ideas for songs. But I had this guitar part that I really liked, and I thought, okay, I've got to write a song this week, and I had no idea. So I went onto, I just started, there's this thing called Stumble Upon, where it just throws random websites at you, and it landed me on this quotations website. And there was a quotation by Muhammad Ali, and he said that he hated every minute of his training. But he just didn't enjoy being in the gym. He hated it. But he knew that if he wanted to be a champion, he had to suffer that. So this was a quotation about suffering. And I thought, hang on, that's great. What other quotations are there going to be on this website about suffering? So I just typed suffering in the search bar, and it threw up all these amazing quotations by Dostoevsky and Keats and Nietzsche. And, so I just basically collected the quotes I liked and started writing a song based on those quotes and some of my own ideas. But there's a great way to find song ideas. Go to a quotes website and start reading quotes until you find somebody who said something that resonates with you and would make a good song. There's one idea. That's one trick I learned, and I learned that by doing the song a week. I wouldn't have learned it any other way. But, there's lots of tricks.
Yeah, I actually remember chatting to you at, where were we, House of Machines a couple months back, and you were giving me some tips on songwriting. And I just remember saying that you have to come up with an idea and then you can brainstorm, different ideas that are related to that.
There's two ways I've got of writing songs, and that I also kind of discovered in the process. Was the first is where you start with an idea. So you look for an idea like that, like Suffer Well. You hunt for an idea, and you just stay on the lookout everywhere you go. Things people say. Often you'll hear a song and you'll go, wow, that's something I think all the time, but I never thought of writing a song about it. So these things are always passing through our minds, but we never catch them. So you're always on the lookout for ideas. And then when you find an idea, then there's that method that I explained, where it was actually something I learned on a songwriting course that I did online last year through Berkeley in Boston, I think they are. There are these free online courses you can do. The website was Coursera, Coursera, Coursera. And there you can find hundreds of these online courses about anything from universities all over the world. But anyway, so this was a songwriting course, and the method they describe is you start with an idea and you start brainstorming keywords around that idea. So if say your song was Suffer Well, you could say pain, you could say heartache, you could just brainstorm ideas. And then you write down these keywords and you make sure that your 10 keywords don't rhyme with each other. That's very important, because what you're going to do next is go to your rhyming dictionary and just find as many words as you can that rhyme with each keyword. So you start with your first keyword and you just start finding rhymes. You look that keyword up in your dictionary.
So if pain was a keyword,
Yeah, then you would see rain and you'd think, could rain be in the song? Yeah, well, rain is a great metaphor for sadness. I'll stick that on my list. Gain, okay, obviously no pain, no gain. That's a word that might appear. And the great thing about that process is that each time you see a new word on that list in the rhyming dictionary and you're thinking, could that be in a song? That word will often get you thinking in a way that you wouldn't be thinking about an idea for that song, because it might be a word which you'd never have dreamed of putting in the song, but suddenly there it is, and it's suggesting a line about stain, about the stain you left on my heart, for example, or,
yeah.
So each word sparks an idea, and it's an idea generator, that method. So you end up with this sheet of 10 keywords, or however many, more or less 10 keywords, and as many rhymes as you can for each keyword, and then that's what you use to build your verses. You just got all these words you can start chucking in verses. You can use them as end of line rhymes or internal rhymes. They're all there. So that's the one method.
And I used that. I actually wrote a song and I saw it all the way through. So just so that you know, I've been taking your advice.
Brilliant. So that's the one. That's the one way of writing a song. You start with an idea and you build a song up around the idea. And the other way is to just have no idea. And you're playing your guitar. You've got a feeling, and then you just start writing whatever the hell comes out of your head, and trust that your subconscious can create something. Every night you go to sleep and you dream, and your mind effortlessly creates these incredible things.
I literally am, I'm about to lose my skull from nodding so much in agreement.
Yeah.
Because, no. I mean, look, I can vouch, first of all, about the whole just from nothing, getting a song. I mean, I'll sometimes sit with my guitar for a few hours without even noticing, you know what I mean? Because the time just flies by every now and then. And then all of a sudden, you start playing something, you get an idea in your head, and you start talking. And then it just works out. It just
exactly. To me, those are the best songs because they're the most honest in a way. It's like you can construct a song using your left brain.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not the interesting part of the brain. The interesting part of the brain is the part of your brain that creates dreams at night, and those are the songs that I love the most. I'd rather hear a Bob Dylan song like Tambourine Man or whatever, where the lyrics are just crazy and they don't have any logical sense, than a well-structured country and western song that tells a specific story. Although I love them both, which is why I try and write both kinds of songs. But always my favorite, the one that sets me free when I hear it, is the Bob Dylan kind, where there's this crazy, dreamy story that isn't really a story. That's just a bunch of wild images.
Where everything that's said in the song is almost just another message, and it's all emotion.
Yeah,
it's not like it's calculated.
It's unconscious stuff.
Yeah.
It's stuff that makes you feel and allows you to dream your own dream on top of it, and allows you to think your own meaning. It's not prescribing a story that you.
It's almost like the difference between constructing a song and like expressing a song. You know what I mean? It's two different things. It's two different skills, really. I mean, they're both admirable. I mean, if you can build up a great song just from calculations.
And that's not black and white. I mean, the one method always involves some of the other method. So that's the great thing about being able to do both, is you can actually use both in the same song.
Synergy.
Yeah. Often I'll be just doing the method of writing without thinking, the unpremeditated method of just letting stuff come out of my brain, and then suddenly I'll go, wow, hang on, that's a good idea. That song you just played, Be My Echo, was one of those. I just started writing, and then for whatever reason, I just started singing Be My Echo. I didn't have any idea why that came out of my head, and suddenly that became a great focus for the song,
That's incredible. Very, very interesting. Well, why don't we take a listen to one of your songs, Simon?
Okay.
You've got a beautiful Larrivee guitar here today. I'm a big Larrivee fan, made in Canada by John Larrivee and the family. So we're going to have a live performance now from Simon van Gent playing a track off his new record, Suffer Well, which I mentioned is being released this coming Thursday. No, not this Thursday.
Thursday week,
3rd of September. So we're going to have a live performance now from Simon. What is the name of this track?
It's called Meerkat and Cobra, and this is actually the last song on the album. screw my head on and I stretch out my feelings and push myself along with my feet in the shallows of shadowy dreams. I go into the kitchen to plot and to scheme philosophy. All that I ask for is a raft for these days on the ocean alone. Apostrophes are all I have now for words like I love you and honey I'm home. Absolution and blame, meerkat and cobra inside me. I hope that if I call it names, my bad self will no longer abide me. Nightly aching awake, and I take on the day and I plug in, I switch on and I plug away. Feeling overly worked, feeling underly paid. I live for the moment when I hit the hay. Philosophy, all that I ask for is a raft for these days on the ocean alone. Apostrophes are all I have now for words like I love you and honey I'm home. Absolution, blame, meerkat and cobra inside me. I hope that if I call it names, my bad self will no longer abide me. Lightly aching awake, and I make up my mind not to let you negate all the things that I find. The streets where I wander and work to be kind, always watching my back should you sneak up behind. I hate you now, the way you keep popping into the movie that plays in my head. Please take a bow and exit the stage. The show's over, the actors have all gone to bed. Apostrophes are all I have now for words like I love you and honey I'm home. Philosophy, all that I ask's for a raft for these days on the ocean alone. Absolution and blame, meerkat and cobra inside me. I hope that if I call it names, my bad self will no longer abide me.
It's the exceptionally talented singer-songwriter Simon van Gent live with a track called Meerkat and Cobra from his latest record, Suffer Well, which comes out September 3rd. Cool. Well, a real privilege to have you in the studio today.
Thanks very much for having me.
Really awesome singer-songwriter. Cool. And if people want to get hold of your other albums as well, they're all...
yeah, they can all be found via the website. There's a link to iTunes, and there's also, if you go to the website Bandcamp, bandcamp.com, all the albums are up there. Otherwise, just email me and I can always make a plan to get an actual physical copy to whoever wants one.
Awesome.